Most people that go into a layoff have been working very hard at that job. And then you have the reality of hitting that wall and figuring out that that's not what you're going to be doing every day. If you're job searching right now, you're in the right place. Welcome to Land Your Next Job, the show that helps you move from ghosting and rejection to interviews and offers. I'm Erica Parker Price, a certified career coach with a background in tech who has spent nearly a decade helping professionals land roles at companies like Microsoft, Google, and mission-driven organizations. Each week, I share what's actually working in today's job market, from LinkedIn and networking to how AI is reshaping hiring. You'll get clear strategies and inspiration so you can run this marathon without burnout or guesswork. Follow the show and let's land your next job together. Hi, this is Erica Parker Price, and this is Land Your Next Job. Today's topic is a tough one. We are talking about what to do immediately after you're laid off. Now, I understand that those of you out there may be in all different categories. Some of you may have stumbled on this podcast very recently after you were laid off. Some of you might be in fear that it's in your future. And others, it may just be good information to have, whether you want to share it with somebody else or you just want to be prepared for whatever comes. Regardless of what category you find yourself in, I'm a believer that information is power, and having this at your fingertips so that you know what to do and when to do it can put you in the best shape possible for the road ahead. And I know that's how a lot of you found your way to this podcast. So much of this podcast, other episodes, we talk about how to land the next job. What are the strategies, the tips and tricks? And there are many other episodes that you can go listen to for that. But that is not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the very real steps to do immediately after you get laid off. And I will be completely honest and say, we're not going to talk about resumes. We're not going to talk about LinkedIn. We're not going to talk about networking. And the reason for that is that what I see is that people want to jump into the job search immediately. It feels like there is a clock that is ticking, and if you don't get in there right away, you are going to be missing out on opportunities. So I'm going to tell you that this podcast is not about that. It is not about telling you that you have to jump in and that if you don't, you're going to miss the opportunity. What I want to do is set the stage for you to approach the job search from the best place possible. And I mean the best place for you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. How can you be your best self? And the reason is that that is the version that you are going to be bringing into your future job search. When you're asking for a quick virtual coffee chat or you are showing up for an interview, that's when you want to be at your best. So what we're talking about today is what do you have to get done and how can you show up as your best self? Okay, so we already covered what not to do, but what should you do? I'm going to go through this in 6 steps. And then at the end, I'm going to put one more piece of information in there, a 7th step for any of you that have been laid off so recently that you still have access to your digital files to your company. I'll put something specifically for you at the end. Most people, this happens so quickly. By the end of the hour or by the end of the day, you have been laid off. And so there wasn't any opportunity for that. So that's why I include that at the end. But we're going to start right here with step number 1, which is get your house in order. You have just been through a massive change that is going to impact your daily schedule, your finances, who you interact, all these different things. And now is the time that you want to get your house in order. What I'm talking about here doesn't need to take more than a day. And I think, honestly, the next step is going to be even more important, but this is the one that has to happen at the beginning. So first of all, get your paperwork in order. And that includes any severance offer that was made to you when you left your company. If you were lucky enough to get a severance offer, you want to understand exactly what that is. How much money will you be getting? How long will you get it for? And what exactly does it include? For example, does it include health insurance? Does it include any sort of outplacement services? What parts of your benefits do you still have access to? What does it mean for vesting of any stock that you had? You want to understand, and I really, truly encourage you to read that severance paperwork so that you know exactly what is coming your way and so that you can make plans around that. The second piece is unemployment, and this is going to depend on where you live. It depends on your country, it depends on your state, but you want to understand what you're eligible for. I definitely find that there are people that are eligible for unemployment that were not expecting it, but you also want to understand how long is it good for and what you have to do to get it. So you may need to do something every week. You may need to show proof that you're applying for jobs. Figure out what the rules are and then put a good system in place to just make that a check mark that you do on whatever schedule you need to do. Most importantly, though, you want to know how long it's going to last for. I was actually doing a webinar a few months ago, and I asked people, what did you learn today? And one person said, I learned that there's a limit to unemployment. I didn't even know that. So that is something that you want to make sure that you understand. The third piece of this is health insurance. Again, I know this depends on what country you're in. If you're here in the United States where we don't have a national health service, you want to find out how long is yours good to. A lot of companies, you're good through the end of the month. I know I've left large companies that were self-employed and you were only good through the end of the day. And so that's where your COBRA kicks in. Again, US based. Check the rules as they can always change, but my understanding of it now is that you have 60 days to enroll for COBRA. You can backdate it, which means that some people decide, hey, I actually have another job that I'm going to. It's going to be starting in 2 weeks. And so I'm not going to do it unless something catastrophic happens. That was the advice I was given when I left a job once, is sign the paperwork, leave it somewhere where somebody can submit it for you. And then if anything happens, you send it in and you'll be covered that whole time. But that's something that you get to decide. Most people today are going to choose to either go on a partner's insurance, that may be the best option for you, or your COBRA insurance, but figure out what your options are. Okay, so that was all the paperwork pieces. The next piece is specifically related to finances. So the first thing I want to say is know where all of it is and that you have access and you know the passwords to get into all of that. This is something that can change when you leave the company, and it's amazing what you can forget in a couple months as it goes by. So just be clear, where is your 401k? What are those numbers? I'm not saying access it. I'm just saying be really clear on where all of it is and make sure that you know how to go in and take a look at it. Some companies that had 401k and separate employee stock programs, they may have them through different banks. So just get all of that in order. The next piece is a bigger one. What is your timeline? And I know this is an incredibly hard question to answer, but when do you ideally need to go back to work from a financial perspective? You may base that answer on how long your severance is, how long your unemployment will last, what your savings are. And I will tell you that most people come to me with a certain timeline that tends to be on the very short side. I need to be back at work in 2 months. The job search in 2026, it's taking a while. So the next question I want to ask is, what is your backup plan? So what if you're not working at the time that any sort of severance or unemployment or whatever those financial resources are? What is your backup plan? And it can be a couple different things, right? You may have the ability to tap into savings. I know it's not what a financial advisor would suggest if you're in the middle of the career, but it may be the only option that you have. I know my family did this. My husband was a cardiologist who left his profession with very little notice for a disability. One might think that there were disability payments that kicked in right away, but that actually isn't what happened. And so we did have to tap into savings, and I set that up on a system. I felt privileged that I was able to, and I had that money just transferred into my bank account because that was the money that we needed to live on until we figured out a longer term plan. In terms of a backup plan, savings is one way to look at it. There's the potential that you're going to find a different way to bring in income outside of your chosen profession. That's another possibility. And then I also see people that make changes, right? People that live in high cost of living areas that decide, you know what, this isn't making sense for me right now. Maybe this isn't where I want to be living anyway. So that's what I'm talking about when I say, what's your backup plan? What if the timeline that you have isn't met? What is it that you're open to considering? Now, I don't expect you to get an answer to that all in one day, but this is where I'm saying knowledge is power. Knowing what your plan is and knowing what your options are can be very powerful. And then finally, on the finances, make sure that you're feeling good about everything that you are spending. I'm not saying that because you've been laid off, you have to suddenly change everything and become entirely frugal. But what are the things that you're spending money on that you maybe don't even need? I know many of you have been working very busy jobs and you haven't taken a look at all those subscriptions that you have. And quite frankly, I know that some of us, myself included, end up with double subscriptions to the same services. So that may be a small amount, but there's no reason to be wasting money right now. You have the time, take a look at everything that's in your monthly outlay of expenses and make sure it all makes sense. Okay, so enough about the money piece. The last piece is the technical piece. I am surprised at the number of people that I talk to that actually exit the workforce without having their own laptop and in extreme cases without having their own phone. So I am going to say this is an area where you do want to go spend money. And of course, the reason people don't have these is because they've been provided to them by their company. If for some reason you're in a position where you don't have a current laptop and phone, I think that is absolutely one area that makes sense to put the money out for that. And of course, get any of the software that you need. If there are subscriptions that are relevant for your industry and you have been relying on your company's subscription plan, now is not the time to suddenly back off of those if it's something that's really important for not only your job, but also your job search. Okay, so that was not the fun part. The next part is actually much more fun. Step 2 of all of this is to take a break. And so hopefully you made it through step 1 in a day or two. Maybe you've already even done that. But step 2, take a break, is because your mind needs a rest. I know that most people that go into a layoff have been working very hard at that job. And then you have the reality of hitting that wall and figuring out that that's not what you're going to be doing every day. So I want your mind and your body to just take a break. I want to ask you, what is it that you have always wanted to do and you couldn't do it because of your schedule? Okay? It could be that you want to sit down and read a book in the middle of the day and not care about anything else. Maybe you want to take a road trip. I have a client who had past experience where anytime he really needed to break, he took a motorcycle trip. He would get on his bike and just ride and not have a plan for where he was going to go. While we were working together, he did start to make plans for it. He's now married and has kids, and not everybody was such a fan of that. So he ended up just taking a road trip by car. But from that same perspective of not knowing exactly where he was going to be each night, just letting the road unfurl in front of him. Maybe there's exercise classes that you want to do that have never fit into your schedule, and now is your chance to say, you know what, I'm going to do the 2:00 class. Maybe it's time that you fly home and you see your parents. Now, it's going to be very individual. Some of you may say, oh, that's the worst thing I can do. They're going to pound me about why I'm not working. But figure out if there's a big trip or a little trip or something that you want to do. And maybe it's nothing. Maybe you want to wake up tomorrow morning and have absolutely nothing on your calendar. And you get to decide what it is you want to do, whatever it is you're feeling like. Now, how long should this break be? That's going to be very dependent. Some people need more of a break. Their mind and body really have been through a brutal period of time. And in order to get that reset, they need a couple weeks, a couple months. If you have that luxury financially, I think that is completely fine. I also think a week would be amazing as well. So I'm telling you to spend this week not going on LinkedIn, not thinking that you have to be networking. Just spend the time taking a break. And like I said in the beginning, the real point here is that you want to be showing up for the job search in the best mindset possible. You don't want to be panicking. You don't want to be coming from a place of scarcity. You want to be showing up as the best version of yourself anytime you're approaching a job search. And just giving yourself that break is going to help with that. Okay, step 3 is build the healthiest version of yourself. Now, I know you're thinking what I really need to do is get a job. This is not the time that I had carved out for me to get back in shape. But what I'm going to tell you is that being the healthiest version of yourself right now is contributing in a positive way to the job search. So I'm going to break it down into some categories. Sleep, I think that is the easiest one to fix. Many of you, I know, are not getting enough sleep. And of course, there can be all kinds of reasons that are contributing to it. But one of them for sure can be the schedule of your last job. You have more time now, and I would highly recommend that you prioritize sleep because it is one of the easiest things to put on your plate. The next one is food. So think about how you're fueling your body every day. You actually have more time now to actually focus on whether it's cooking or just choosing healthier versions when you go out. And then, of course, the next component of this is exercise. And really, it's all about just moving. There are millions of other people out there that are going to tell you what is best for you. That's not my job. But what I'm telling you is that you want to be getting enough sleep. You want to be fueling your body. You want to be moving your body. Quite frankly, all of those things are going to be very good for your mental health, but I'm going to tell you that mental health is another piece of this that I absolutely recommend. The job search is going to bring up everything that you have never dealt with in your life. So if you have ever considered whether you need to pay more attention to your mental health, and maybe that includes going to talk to somebody, now is absolutely a good time for that. You may even still have access to benefits that make that possible. And part of that journey may honestly be grieving the loss of your job. It may be mourning that identity that you really associated with. So like I said, there are a lot of things that come up for people, and now is the best time to be dealing with that. Also, don't ignore your doctor's appointments, your dentist appointments. You want to be in the best health possible, and you don't know how long this period of time is going to be. So I'm going to assume that you're on some sort of continuous healthcare coverage or possibly a COBRA plan. And I would say don't delay, don't put things off. Keep taking care of yourself. And then finally, mindfulness. If you have ever tried a mindfulness practice and had a hard time sticking to it, I get it. I'm one of those people, but I think this is a perfect time to restart that or introduce it in yourself for the first time. I recently did a whole series on positive intelligence, starting at episode 9, that talks about how to incorporate mindfulness into your day in short little bits. There's, of course, all kinds of apps and classes and other things that you can access, and I highly encourage you to take a look at any of those. I actually have clients who have said that the time that they were laid off from their job, which is not time that they wanted, not time that they planned for, but ended up turning them into the healthiest version of themselves. And in the end, this is, of course, after they landed that next job, they were actually very grateful for that time, because when they looked at who they had been before versus who they were now, they were better in so many ways. So pay attention to your health, mind, body, spirit, all of it. Pay attention to all of that. Okay, step 4 is all about finding your people. We all need support, and the job search can be incredibly isolating. You no longer have that same group of people that you're interacting with all the time. So you want to find who your new group of people is. It may be other job seekers. That's literally the reason that I created my Career Reset group, is because I saw how much my individual clients also needed the benefit of seeing other people in the same position. Now, when you're thinking about who these people are, a lot of you are going to think that it's going to be your best friends or your family or the colleagues that you worked with most closely. And frequently it ends up not being the case. Many of those people are not in the same point in time. And quite frankly, there can be a grieving process that you go through when you leave a job and you realize that those very close relationships that you had sometimes don't survive the layoff. And I don't mean in a bad way that there's any sort of major break, they just drop off. So that's why I'm saying you need to be finding who your people are. And some of them can be supporting you on the job search. Some of them may just be people that you want to be seeing on a regular basis. So this is where it really makes sense to think about, where is it that you're going to hang out now? Where are you going on a regular basis? Is it your gym? Is it your coffee shop? Do you want to have a co-working space? Is it your church? Where are those places where you're going to continue to see people and participate in communities, maybe even outside of the job search, but just in that human way? Okay, step 5 is to figure out, how do you want to stay on top of your industry? So most of you were in a space where information was regularly coming to you and you didn't really have to try so hard to stay on top of things. That's actually changed. So I think it's a good time to think about, what sources do I want to be tapping into? Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a newspaper, maybe there's certain newsletters that you want to subscribe to, but what are those and how can you stay on top of it? Now's a good time to think about that. And while step 5 is really just staying on top of things as they're changing, step 6, I'm going to really recommend that you learn something brand new. So when you are in this position where you no longer have quarterly objectives, yearly goals, all of that, your main objective becomes finding a job. And that is something that is not in your control to the level that most of us would like, that any of us would like, quite frankly. Learning something new is something that you can control much more. It may be related to your business. Maybe there's a particular skill. I know everybody's ramping up on AI now. Or maybe it's something totally different. Maybe it's a creative pursuit. You could take a class. Online, there's zillions of options, but even better if you can find something in person. You could read a book. You could volunteer. Myself, I started volunteering with the Red Cross last year. I'm on their disaster action team, and I can tell you I've learned so much about things that I have never even considered about local disasters. So something that's completely different, it's just a way to keep your brain going. Okay. So that is my list to work through for anybody who has recently experienced a layoff. So to review, get your house in order, your paperwork, your finances, your technical equipment. Number 2, most important, take a break. Number 3, build the healthiest version of yourself. Number 4, find your people. Number 5, figure out how you're going to stay current. Number 6, learn something new. And then number 7, this is for anybody who went through a layoff and you've been given a certain number of days or weeks while you still have access. The first thing I'm going to say is take copies of what is yours, and how you do this and what's legal and in compliance with your company. I'm going to leave that up to you, but I'm going to tell you that the things I would recommend would be your reviews. So your annual or quarterly reviews, all those things that people said about you and all the things you said to document what you've been doing. That can be really important for your resume. Your pay stubs, your total compensation. And if you kept any sort of kudos file of people who said great things about you, go ahead and save those as well. You want to make a plan for how you'll keep in touch with people. So as most people listening to this can relate to, if there's a layoff, you suddenly realize you don't have access to Teams or Slack or email. Now, LinkedIn is always there, and I think most people can connect that way if you don't have people's phone numbers, but make a plan for how you're going to keep in touch with people. And then finally, if you are still on your system and you are still eligible to look for internal transfers, I always suggest that you figure out what's possible there. So if you happen to be somebody who was given a certain amount of time to figure out what's next, looking for internal options is always amazing if you have that possibility. Okay. If that isn't you and you didn't have access, don't worry. That is the spot that 99% of people fall into. It's something that we all figure out. It isn't always as easy, but we all figure it out. That is my checklist. You can download a version of this at ericaparkerprice.com/checklist. For anybody that's in this place, know that I am rooting for you. I do this podcast because I believe everybody deserves support on this journey. If you know somebody who has been impacted recently, go ahead and forward them this episode. It just helps to have somebody give you a roadmap and to tell you some things that you may not be thinking of. But the most important piece here is take care of yourself. I want you to show up as the best version of yourself for that job search. Thanks and have a great week. That's a wrap for this week on Land Your Next Job. If this episode helped, please leave a quick review and subscribe wherever you listen. Share it with a friend in transition, and I'll see you next Monday. Let's land your next job together.